Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy you are all here. We have some people that weren't here last week, and we've been talking about risk. And I just thought I would look at it with a little bit different perspective, and yet our pre-recording brought up all kinds of risks. So it's just amazing. So Lisa was talking about her husband works at home. The risk of working at home is how many hours are you going to put in? So now instead of working an 8-hour day or a 9-hour day, he's working like 10 or 12 hours. Oh, you're muted, Lisa.
Oh, it's always more. So
it's always more.
Yeah, it's the nature of the job, so I guess.
Right. So all I'm saying is we don't look at anything as risk. And I just, because we were talking about risk, I just started thinking about, and I'm a very positive person, but if you want to look at risk as a risk factor, almost everything you do is a risk. You get in your car, right? I heard of a 6-car accident today. Yesterday, when it was raining, I heard about cars that were flipped over. Driving your car is a risk. Walking down the street can be a risk. Everything you do can be a risk. Jonna was telling me about something she did over the weekend where they were teaching how to, so you make what was it, Jonna? What was it called exactly?
Dimensional weaving.
Dimensional weaving. So you make something that's going to go on the wall, but you make part of it come out. So you could walk by and be smacked by it, right? Or if you put it down on the floor, people will trip over it and get hurt. Still recovering from the risk like that. So there's just all kinds of risk. So what I was thinking about was, where's Big Dale? Where are you? There you are. Okay. Was starting this company and looking at the risk before starting the company, right? Somebody said, oh, you're really good at capital raising. Why don't you do that? And I'm like, okay. So that's what I said. I said, okay, so I'm going to go do it, right? Because I said, okay. But then you stop and you have to look at the risk. What are the risks? Well, let's see. You've got to find people that are trustworthy, that have the deals. And how are you going to find out that they're trustworthy? And what's the process you're going to have to go through? And then how about, sorry, there's people coming in. How about, Tina, are you co-host?
Don't worry.
Where are you going to find the money? Where are you going to find people where you could say, hey, this is a really great deal. Would you like to put your money in it? And do they have money? And then we talk about being an accredited investor or being a non-accredited investor. So like everything, and you need to know that before you start the business. Where are you going to meet people, right? Mark has a business where he depends on people knocking on his door. I think everybody here depends on somebody knocking on their door for their success. If you don't have people knocking on your door, how are you going to have a successful business? So that's a risk, and you have to look at every part of that before you open the doors, before you go out and meet people. You have to, and then you have to do all the marketing stuff. You have to come up with a logo. You have to come up with a mission statement. You have to come up with this. You have to come up with that. And then are you going to hire staff? And if you are, what kind of staff are you going to hire? And are they going to be full-time or part-time? Are they going to be 1099 people? Or are they going to be W-2 people? All of that's a risk. And then you spend your time training someone, and did they really work out? And then are you always training all the time? So there's just so many things.
The glue is in the car?
Yes.
Who's in the car? Somebody's in the car. It's not me. See, we talked about all that risk, and there's somebody in the car. So there you go. And Nika's working on a project, and it's a risk because you never know exactly how it's going to come out. You look at it, you put your plans together, you put your money together, and then does something happen that stops the forward movement? I know I've seen many a project, even in real estate, where the project's going and then you drive. So it's something you drive by like every other day or every couple of days, and then you see it sitting there doing nothing. And a year later, it's still sitting there doing nothing. Like, how can anybody let that sit there and do nothing? So all the risk you take, and how do you get to that? So I just thought I would share a little bit about me, which I don't do because I just don't. I don't know why. I just don't like to talk about myself. I've looked at the path of how I got here, and I loved real estate. I can't remember when I didn't, but my dad was a builder. We grew up in a town called Redlands, not too far from here, 60 miles from here. And he built houses. And I started out by sweeping out and cleaning the place up. After school, I took the bus, just got off where it was close to walk to what development he was working on.
Thank you. I mean that.
And then clean it up. So the guys had a clean place to come back to the next day. And it was fun. I had a good time. And the guys flirted with me, and I was like 16. So it was always fun. They were always good looking, and they were always in good shape. And that's the nice part about contractors and builders. They stay in shape, picking up those hammers, keeping those muscles good. So, but I didn't go into real estate. I was told by my uncle it was way too risky. And my cousins and I wanted to go start buying houses, fixing them up, and renting them out. And we didn't do that because I trusted my uncle, which turned out to be a mistake because I'm in what is best for me. So I went and did other things. I worked for corporations. I probably waitressed at some point. I know I did to get through college. I got into garment industry for 20 years, which was, I thought, perfect for me because I had all the way through college, I was the designer for all the plays, for all the costumes. So I naturally had that background. I used to make all of my own clothes. And I did that for 20 years. And then I just got the itch to start looking into real estate and getting into real estate. And I did that. I got my license, became a broker, and worked in the local Century 21. And I got married. And I had a really great marriage, except he didn't like real estate. He was scared of real estate. See, here's that risk. Here's that risk. Okay. So I did real estate for other people, but not for myself. I think we bought 3 or 4 properties, and that was it. And what I really wanted to buy was 10, so that my husband was able to retire and not have to work. And then we both could play. But that didn't happen. He died. And so there's another risk. Marriage, that's a big risk. Most of you have been married or are married, so you know what a risk it is. Some of them make them, some of them don't. And for whatever reason, life changes and we change with it. So after Joe passed away and I recovered from that, I got myself into real estate. I started looking for properties. I became a transaction coordinator. I built this business of transaction coordinating, and I was independent, and I worked for about 6 or 7 offices around the Arcadia, Pasadena area. I hired some gals. I trained them, taught them everything they needed to know, because I had to run around and go to all the different offices because I was independent. So you went to them, you picked all the paperwork up, you did all the things, and we offered extra services. We worked with the listing agents, and we'd run around to all the houses and put the flyers in and meet the termite guys and do all of that. Right. So great. And then one day I was asked to leave. And then I was asked to leave another office and then another office because they all decided they'd hire somebody inside. So there you are, you're starting all over again. What do? You start all over again. So like that. What do you guys look at when you're looking at your businesses for risk? And do you even look at risk or do you just move forward?
I'm a lawyer. I always look at risk. It's
Yes,
the occupational hazard. I look at everything first on the worst case scenario, and then I work my way backwards. Though I'm normally a very positive person, I just have, always in the front of my mind is like, okay, what's the risk? And then what's the possible reward? As opposed to looking at it the other way around.
right. You start at the end and come back to the front. It's
Yeah.
a great way to approach.
Well, it's also great when if your client, and I know I'm talking about in the legal realm, but I think this also translates well to real estate. If you have partners, if your client is of the reverse mind, someone who always looks at the reward and doesn't care about risk, or risk is a secondary thing, you can make a great team, because sometimes I can miss what some of the rewards may be if all I'm looking at is the risk.
So,
how about that?
yeah, well, with what you do, I can see that. With somebody that's running a company, part of, or usually the main reason they're looking at risk is for the reward, to make sure that that reward does come. What about you,
Or
Mark?
that it's worth it.
Oh, of course, always, is it worth it? Yeah, there's always times to look at, is it worth it? The economy changes. Does that change your business? Most of the time, it does change it somewhat in some way. I think that everybody right now, at some time in the last 3 or 4 years, has been affected in some way. What about you, Mark?
Well, I agree. I think, like most things in life, it's a balancing act, and you want to look at both sides of the equation and make sure that you've got finding the balance there.
And is part of the balance the way you market for something, or the family, or where the family's going, or what would you look at as balance?
Sure. So, I'm a planner by profession. And so I think, do you have a plan to, if it's marketing, do you have a marketing plan? How are you going to get that door knocking? And do you have a viable plan that you can work that's going to do that? And are you willing to work that plan? So that's certainly part of it.
Yes, it is. How about you, Nika? You do other things other than just the capital raising. You've got a few other things you're juggling around. How do you determine that whatever it is that you're taking on is worth the risk? How do you look at that risk first, and then what? I'm not posing that question right. So take it away.
Well, I passively invest in apartment buildings, I've been doing that with my 401k money. As far as the risk, you just have to know the people, and even then, things can go wrong. And one of the projects went wrong, and I didn't make any money, didn't lose any money. So I try to do as much investigation as I can on my own as far as the numbers, and then I ask the other co-sponsors, and they look at it and get their opinion on it.
Do you do that before you close?
Yeah, before I invest the money, yeah.
Do you then, after you closed or after you sold the property and you didn't make any money, did you do a debrief with the team?
No, I was just, it was very hard to even go through to get a hold of the guy, like he kind of didn't even have any remorse. Like he said, hey, the COVID hit and the government interfered, people didn't pay rent. What do you want me to do? So I said, well, nothing, but no more investing with you,
He's a passive investor. That's what he was talking about. Yeah.
Nika, can you take this for a few minutes, please? Dan,
Okay.
Dan has his hand up, so
Yeah. So when it comes to risk, the thing that comes to my mind is I'm always thinking about the time commitment more than anything else. Like people, like everybody thinks in terms of dollars and cents, but maybe it's because I'm in marketing and also like promotion in general. So the thing is, like, I'm always going like, okay, so who's providing the hustle? Because like I've done all sorts of digital business, and that's the part that I find like there's no substitute, right? You can go to a bank, you can get a loan, and then you can spend that on marketing, but like if there's no hustle, that's the one part that it just has to be there, or else it's not going to work. So when I think of risk, it's the time risk that I'm always looking for. Is like, how much time am I going to have to invest in this, and what's the likelihood that the person I'm talking to or going to work with, that they're going to have the time to really execute. So that's what I think of to answer your question there, Peggy.
your time's a huge factor.
Is, but you can kind of get hung up on, it is only my time, and you might be willing to risk your time a little more if you didn't put any money in.
So,
And then I have a lot of that. So
were you putting
I
your
put a lot
time?
of sweat equity into things, so it feels like, okay, well, if I only spent 10 hours, is the risk reward, and it didn't work out, it was just 10 hours of my time, or how many ever hours or whatever. You see my point? But I didn't put 10,000 to where that's feels a little harder hit or something if you put money into it, to where sometimes if you put your time, maybe you feel that the reward is better, that it's only time. But then again, you can get in your own trap with that, and you're spending a lot of time doing all kinds of things and nothing works out,
Right, like training people. That's a case.
Right.
And that is your time. And you can
Yeah.
train somebody for 6 months and they leave, and you just lost all that time. You didn't just lose that time, but you lost that money that you paid them. Now they're in a better position to get a better job because they're well trained. But where are you with your company? Time's time. Yeah, well, we say time is money.
Yeah,
And because of the
exactly.
way that I don't know if the new laws or a new case has been interpreted regarding non-competes, you can't, like, just because I trained you, you can't go work for a competitor, for a year or two or whatever. You can't do those limitations anymore.
Well, I trained for transaction coordinating. I don't know if you know what transaction coordinating is, but that is real estate agents have to have a whole list of all the things that they have to check off. And it's a lot of paperwork. So they hire somebody to do it for them and pay them a fee for that. Well, if you don't have everything, you could get in trouble. Well, I trained these gals, and then other real estate companies came in and asked them to come work for them. We didn't have them sign anything that said they couldn't compete. Lesson. But how can you tell somebody they can't make a living at what they do?
Well,
that's
even if
what
you
I'm
could,
saying.
even if
You
you
can't
could
do that,
before,
yeah.
you can't do that anymore. Even if you could do
Yeah.
that before, which was kind of sketchy, you definitely can't do that anymore.
Yeah. You can't keep someone from, if that's their livelihood, and say, well, you worked for me, now you can't go work for anyone else because you left. That's your skill set. You can't tell someone they can't go make a living. Exactly.
Exactly.
But the problem is that you can, and people believe it, and like I've seen it, right? I've seen a floor full of people who were concerned about that exact thing. It's like, oh well, I can't just go to the competition and work over there because they're going to chase me for the non-compete clause. So it's yucky both ways. There's no two ways about it, because I've seen both sides. Like it should be more, there should be more incentive to invest in your employees. That's what I think. You know?
Yeah, instead of like the threat. you
Yeah,
know?
it's basically a flat out
Yeah.
conflict of interest, and that's what bugs me,
Yeah.
right? Like the employer and employee relationship, it's not a a cooperative interest unless you like get really creative. It's really tough.
Well, one way
Well,
to do it
especially if you
is
feel like they
you
didn't
do.
treat you that well, as an employee or as working for someone or even independent, if you weren't happy there, it shouldn't be, "Oh, okay, now that it works both ways. You didn't treat me, if I didn't enjoy working there, and, then I should be free to go where I want to work. Yeah.
Yeah, there's also ways to keep people with future bonuses or golden handcuffs or things like that, where you incentivize people to stay because there's something at the end of the rainbow, hopefully.
That's the
Dell.
Yes, there is, based on what I'm hearing, there is a few things that it can happen, and it did happen to me about 5 years ago, twice already. One, it was in 1998. My company and us and individuals were sued by $50 million each for starting up another company, which obviously you cannot do in California. They were just trying to keep us from making money, right? Dragging us into court and all this kind of stuff. The judge and everything, they throw away that case, but it took us 6 months, something like that. The other issue that happened to me back in 2016, it was I wanted to leave. So they said, okay, you can leave, and we're gonna pay you up to 9 months or a year, but if you don't work for anybody else that is within the same industry. So I said, okay, that's fine. They were paying me my full salary, insurance, all my thing, as long I wouldn't go to work for a competitor. So I didn't, right? I was doing everything else, whatever I could do, but they were sending my check to my every 2 weeks to my bank account, like nothing. So that is a way that they can keep you, but just by forcing you, there is nothing they can do about it.
Thank you. And Dan, what were you saying?
No, nothing. But if anybody else wants to pay somebody to be quiet, I excel at that. So I'd like to throw my hat into the ring. Just if you want to pay me not to work, I'll be a very loyal employee. Thank you very much.
I think it's a great idea to say yes. You can pay me by
Exactly.
I'm happy to take that. How often does that happen, though?
Yeah.
You would be surprised how many people would not be happy being told they can't work, even though they're getting enough money to not work.
I definitely get that too. It's
Yeah.
like if it's your passion, then definitely. But like, you should be able to figure out a place to volunteer or something, like find meaning elsewhere. But
Right. There's so many things. Yes.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
thinking a cruise ship.
hang gliding.
On a cruise ship. Hey, Claire, welcome. We're just talking about risk, different kinds of risk. We've been talking about real estate risk, but we kind of are covering a lot of other risk subjects today because everything's a risk. As positive as we are, everything's a risk. So
Life is risky.
life is risky. And where's Elise? Elise was on here. She's still on here. She shared last week about.
She's here.
Are you here?
Hey, Peg. Yes, Peg. Hey.
Oh,
How you
okay.
doing?
Great. Thanks for coming again.
Sure.
Elise is a buy and hold gal, and she fixes them up. And like, there's all kinds of risks that go along with that. And she shared about that. You pretty much do the same. Well, you're a flipper, so you have a lot of risk around real
Yes, we
estate
do.
and economies and weather and
Time.
things like that. Plus, you drive back and forth to Florida, or you were, and that's a huge risk that you might get in an accident or the car might break down.
Yep.
Any other kind of risk?
Well, the risk of time
Ah.
is a risk. The things don't go as plotted out and start costing money as they delay.
Mm.
But yeah, there's all sorts of risk in flipping.
There's all
Surprises.
kinds of risk.
Surprises.
It's the surprises. So that's a risk right there. Oh, Jonna.
Yeah, I think the other risk is kind of the reverse, is the risk of not doing anything, not investing, of inactivity, right? I worked in portfolio for a company, and people would pad their budget, and I'd have to tell, and then we wouldn't spend the money and invest in anything, and the return on money not invested is zero, right? And so there's a risk in doing nothing.
Lost opportunity. Yes. Yes.
Huge. That's huge.
And look what happened. I've actually seen this with a lot of our investors that I was like, you may want to think about, even if you haven't decided what you want to do, you may want to pull out of the market. And they lost, So that opportunity they would have done better just doing nothing anyway than keeping it where it was. But yeah.
Yeah, so that's the flip side of it. They are doing nothing. They're not paying attention to their money.
Yeah.
And nobody cares.
Well, that's exactly, they because they, were indecisive, then they ended up, losing.
Yep, exactly. Tina, what kind of risk would you add to?
Tenant risk? In the
What
beginning, tenant risk.
Oh,
In the beginning, I started out with mobile homes. And in the park, the association would approve the tenant. And it turns out that in this particular case, they only approved the wife because she was the one that was there. Sometime later, the husband joined. It turned out that he was a professional, or they were a professional
Squatters.
kind of, yes.
An artist, con artist.
A con artist. And so within he paid the first month, and within the next month, his grandmother died, this died, and it was like, wait a minute. So many people can't die in 1 month or in several months. And it turned out this guy was known for years to have gone into other people's places, and he was known in the court system. Attorneys knew him, judges knew him, everybody knew him, and he got away with it every time. And this guy would taunt the attorneys on the homeowner's side. So they all hated this man. And I came in fresh, green, and didn't know what to do. And so much so the guy came to me one day, and he never paid me. He was in there for like six months. And he didn't pay the rent. He paid the first. And after that, one day I got a call, and he said to me, well, I'm selling your house. I'm selling your mobile home. You better come and get $200 if you want it. And I said, what? So he was actually going to sell my mobile home to somebody else. And it was fortunate in that time I had met someone who was in the mobile home business, and he bought and flipped, and that's what he did as an investor. And that guy came in and saved me because I had no idea how to handle a guy like this. So tenant risks.
What did he do? I think we should have an underground of people who aren't afraid to break rules and just be jerks to go in, because I've had a squatter and it is horrible. But what did he do?
What did he do? He eventually came and threw him out. He got the police. He threw everything out. Told him to come and get his stuff. And I remember that guy was such a jerk. I've never met. It ended up being that I think he was a pedophile. He was like everything. You could check him off, and he was one of everything. And I never looked back at
Well, at
mobile
least you got it
homes
all
again.
in one.
I never looked at mobile homes again. Never, never, never.
And they had a vetting process.
But the association, the credit score to get into that park was 700. So I figured, okay, well, let them do it because they have a system. Oh my God, that guy was the worst. And it's funny because after I did my search, I found him everywhere. He was in every court. And like every month I spoke to attorneys who had gone after him. I mean, there's like 5 attorneys who had gone after him. And I'm going, how come they didn't see this? And you know, this is after the fact.
Well, like you said, he had his wife sign up, so his name wasn't on there anywhere.
Well, let me tell you, I look at mobile homes differently now.
Well, you know what? It wouldn't matter if it was a mobile home. That could
I
happen
know.
anywhere.
I know, but it was my first. So that one,
Yeah.
that's like, I'm not touching that one again.
Yeah, sort of sours it.
Yeah,
So did you do a
that happens
background
in
check?
everything. I mean, there was a girl that came on that said on Ren, this other group, that said she had somebody like a renter that came in, and he was a serial person that wasn't even squatting. He did something with trying to trap her in the ADA compliance or something.
Yes.
But her building was so old, like he knew how to look for those, and hers, she couldn't even do the construction to make it compliant. So he got in, and like, I don't even know, I wish I could remember who that girl was. I'd like to follow up, but I mean, she was brand new to it. She's like stuck with this, and like this guy's taking her to court, and she had no way to like fix it in a way, because she couldn't even spend the money to like bring it up, because you know, there was no the setbacks or the whatever, you know, like she like yeah, which she should be grandfathered in, but I don't know. It's still, they were dragging her through courts, and but come to find out, he was a serial at this. Like he'd done this multiple times with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he make money from stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, he gets to be in the property and not pay rent, and
He takes he moves in.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. We've seen people like that before. And then you try to get them out and evict them out, and then they file bankruptcy. That's another thing that tenants could do, but we probably could speak for 6 years on tenants.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's
I went
tons of
into
those.
I went into one of those properties with the landlord, and when he'd had a problem tenant, and that tenant actually took out the toilets, the sinks, everything, and they were just pipes. And I'm gonna, how does this happen? How can they get to this level?
That's vandalism. I used to buy properties to courthouse steps, and people have ruined the house, and we went out, and then we went after them, and they went to jail. So I'm just curious on your experience with this. Obviously, you did a background check, right? What did you find in the background check with these people?
Oh, yeah, you missed the first part of the story, I think.
Oh,
The association had checked out the wife. There wasn't a husband at the time, and she got approved. Then the husband moved in. Yeah.
well, he's not on the lease, so it's illegal. Whoever is living there's got to be on the lease.
Oh, the association knew because we told them, so they knew.
Well, they should be sued.
They
They're responsible.
They should have been sued. But that woman, those people were awful. They weren't even any better than him. Trust me. So
Life happening. What can I say? Yeah. So hi, Ethan. We've been talking. Oh, Ethan likes to show up, and he talks. I love Ethan because I've never seen anybody be able to function like he does. He has the phone on one ear and he listens to the show on the other ear. And it's so amazing. He'll be like this, and then he'll get off the phone and he'll jump right into the conversation like he didn't miss a word. Guy's pretty incredible, actually. If you think about it. You know, he's also got like 5 kids, so There's always something going on in his ears.
Right. I think people with kids, it's a whole thing. You can tell who has kids and who doesn't have kids because when your kids interrupt and you can continue the conversation, other parents get it and they just keep talking, and then other people are like, "What? I hear something in the background." It's like, don't worry about it.
Just the kid.
Just like, it's like the kids in the background. Parents get it. They just, they learn to tune that out and function on with multiple things. Yes.
It's great. Really great. Yeah. So that's really kind of all it is. Jamila, I know you've had a few risk here and there that you've had to work with.
Yeah, I think my risks were like, codes changing and cities changing was my biggest challenge. Yeah. And then, non-disclosure of certain things that were not true. And time, definitely time. I totally agree 100% with the gentleman that talked about time. Money, all this stuff, when you're making money, it's not worth losing your life over.
Oh, no. It's
Yeah.
just stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. Yeah.
Freedom.
I mean, isn't that why everybody does all these, whatever
Right.
they do is for the freedom? And then find
Right. Then when it works the opposite direction, it gets frustrating.
For true. Yep.
That's why we like the silent investing, Peggy.
Well, we like him to stay silent.
Right.
That's funny. But sometimes it's very hard to get the active investor to be like, you should like bridge that gap, have some of the things start to be passive because they get so addicted and they're so used to like, oh, well, if I'm not doing it actively, then they kind of have a hard time with it. And it's just like, you got into it to get to that point, right?
Right. You got in it to have
it,
the freedom, but then you're so busy doing all the deals that you don't have any freedom, which is why you do passive. So you've got the freedom. That's what I said. Yeah. So I invest passively and then I work all the time to show others how they could add eggs to their nest. So I don't have the freedom. Yeah. Like it's not supposed to be.
You choose that though. That's a choice. Yeah. That's a choice. It is, Peggy. It is a choice. You made that choice.
I like to see
because you have your passive investments. You could go stay on cruises.
That's
you
true.
You could.
I do it because I want to. Yep. Yeah. I don't need to be here, but I like to be here. It's a lot of fun. Right. Yeah. Y'all are my family. And I like you so much better than my real family. We tell stories, we have jokes, and everybody smiles, and we're all nice to each other. It's just really lovely. There's another risk, we didn't talk about that, but here's the risk. You're born into a family of which you have no choice. So one day you get to grow up and choose who you want to be your family and let those other ones go or have them figure out how to become into your new family.
Those choices are risky too, though.
Yes. I was going to say that sometimes you go in on an investment with somebody thinking they're your friend and they would never mess anything up, and that turns sour and you lose a friend.
Oh, there's always that. Same with family. You could expect your family to invest with you and they do expect to get paid back, and sometimes that doesn't happen.
I have a rule about investing with anyone who is not your spouse. You should have a written agreement of some kind. So that siblings, children, parents, cousins, uncles, aunts, friends, anyone who's not a spouse, you need to have a written agreement as to not what happens when things go right, but really for what happens when things go wrong.
Speaking of attorneys, what do you say to that, Mark, the other attorney in the room? Well, you work with trusts all the time. So
yes. Yeah, but I would add to that. I would say even when things go right, figure that can cause as many problems as when things go wrong. So you got to know, if your investment blows up and everybody's money's raining down, how's that going to be divided? Who's going to get that? Who's going to control that? That's important too.
And then the people that you never even knew, when somebody passes, pops up, and they weren't privy to what was going to happen, and now they want to be in control and take it all. Or the person that is in control chooses not to follow the directions. I mean, there must be 100 different things that happen after somebody passes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody. Go ahead.
You win the lottery. That's why you don't go right down and claim that lottery ticket. You lie low and you get yourself together and you get everything situated before you go make that claim. So have your defenses in place for those kinds of things that can happen.
Yeah, well, I don't know anybody that's won a lottery.
Yeah, when you win the lottery, you want to go put together a team before you ever go claim it. Get advice as to, because sometimes there's different ways you can claim it to keep your identification out of the press and stuff like that. You definitely want to create a team if you made big money.
Yeah, I'd like to be one of those advisors. We can make them make a whole lot of money, and they wouldn't care how many people approached them because they'd have so much money they could set up a foundation, and you can stand in line for the foundation. But you're going to have to put your time in. But like you said, you got to plan ahead of time. And I don't know that people that buy lottery tickets ever plan anything. Do they? Do any of you know if anybody that's won a lot of money that had a plan in place before they picked up their ticket?
I don't know, but the last couple of large jackpots, I know that they took almost the entire time to collect based on getting their finances and changing their identity and so forth. So absolutely, yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's very good. So does anyone have anything else they'd like to add to this chat today?
Yeah, I have a question, Peggy, if it's okay.
Yeah.
So I had a question in reference to insurance. I know Florida is going through a hard time with insurance right now. And looking at other properties there, they're really scrutinizing it even more so. So they're some of the companies, well, a lot of them had pulled out, but if you do get a policy, they want to have you, based on 4-point, whatever it is, they're still going to come over and look at the property. And based on that, they're going to inspect it and then probably find more things about it. Or based on that, they'll cancel you. So I'm just curious with that, or any, lawsuits and so forth with tenants and so forth. I'm just throwing it out there, see if anybody has any experience.
Tina, you're from that area. Have you heard? I mean, you work with a lot of commercial.
I haven't heard, but I mean, I haven't heard of any lawsuits or anything, but I've heard quite a lot of people saying that their insurance has jumped dramatically. And one of the insurance is going out, they have to go get the 4-point inspection and all of that all over again. So I haven't really heard, but there's a lot of complaint about the prices having gone up really high.
Yeah, and Elise says that the insurance is terrible in Florida.
Well, that's true too. But look, we just had that flooding, so
and
that
then
you shot it through the roof too.
Yeah, and then don't you have like 5 or 6 months of hurricanes
coming up?
Oh, coming up, right? And you have to deal with that every year.
Right. Well, I'm going to tell you, in the last 5 weeks, we have had numerous amounts of tornado warnings. We've never had that before, not like that, and it's not even hurricane season yet.
So you have tornadoes now.
Tornadoes are coming up. They're very frequent now. One was just right off the A1A in Fort Lauderdale. It was like about a mile out from the beach. They took pictures of it and you saw it, like, here's land and here's water, and this is how close it was to A1A strip.
Did it come on land at all?
It did. But by the time it got on, they threw chairs, the beach chairs and all of that stuff. You saw pictures of everybody running off the beach as it was coming on. And it threw things, just the chairs and stuff, umbrellas and stuff went flying. And after that, it died down really quickly.
Once it hit land, it died down.
Yeah, but it just damaged a lot in West Palm Beach right now. So a guy was in his car and it took him away. So it did a lot of damage this weekend.
Wow. So you have tornado season now and then hurricane season.
Usually we have tornadoes with the hurricanes, but these are all coming out now within the last 5 to 6 weeks. And it's like, we had one at 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. They're going off. The alarms are going off. Tornado warnings. And it's like, what?
Oh, yeah, you can't be where there's and are they big, huge tornadoes like they get in Oklahoma? Or are they?
Well, the ones that ripped through West Palm Beach this weekend did quite a considerable amount of damage. I mean, I've never had it where I've had to worry, but now I start to worry when I hear it, because it's that many now, that the warnings.
Yeah, and you guys don't have basements.
Exactly. We're gonna run in the bathtub.
Oh, I don't know that'll stop it.
I don't think so either. I don't think anything's gonna stop it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they should just shut Florida down. Oh, sorry, David. Okay.
No.
No. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you about that. Maybe if you moved further north and west.
I think everybody has their thing. If it's not fire, it's tornadoes,
Earthquakes.
hurricanes, earthquakes. I would rather be in a hurricane than an earthquake.
Yeah, because you can see the tornado coming, the hurricane. Here, you're laying in bed, and the next thing you know, you're shaking.
Mm-hmm.
And it could last 30 seconds and it's gone. It could be 10 seconds. It could be just running through like a train, gone. I mean,
would you rather know that a natural disaster is coming, or would you rather be surprised, assuming you can't leave?
Well, Tina said she'd like to be able to see it.
I want to know.
I don't want to know.
Yeah, the earthquakes are perfect for someone who doesn't want to know.
Exactly. I can put up shutters. I can deal with that, but not earthquakes.
Yeah, well, there is that not knowing.
So when I started law school at Pepperdine, they had just built a big addition. You know, the Pepperdine Law School is up on the hill, and the professor says to the classroom, he says, I know a lot of you are not from California, not used to earthquakes. I just want to let you know, this building the new building that we're in right now has been built to the highest standards. It can withstand an 8.5 Richter scale earthquake. Unfortunately, the hill goes at 7.5.
Oh.
The building will still be here, but you'll be surrounded and under the.
It'll roll down the hill in one piece.
Oh,
oh my. Yeah, well, you know, so for those who are not from California, we have these very tall buildings in downtown LA. They are on rollers. And somebody was on the radio after the last earthquake that we had. And she said it was the scariest thing that she's ever, worse than a roller coaster, because the top sways. I don't think it actually does that, but it feels like it does that. like that and like that. And she's like, she said it was this, and you can't move. You're like,
Yeah, I've been in those buildings during a couple earthquakes or aftershocks, and I mean it's like being on a cruise ship.
Yeah. I was in
like 10
Mexico
minutes.
City in one of those buildings, and it was the weirdest feeling. It just swayed, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening? They're like, oh, it's just an earthquake. I'm like,
oh, it's just an earthquake.
yeah. I
there
was
it
like,
is.
this is like, they were like, you're safer in here than anywhere else because it was built to withstand them,
It
in a high
was.
rise, versus like a shanty, a shanty house, I was like, well, I guess he's right. I mean, it was in a modern hotel, in Mexico City. So I was like, okay, I'm glad to be here at least, Yeah.
Great.
Scary. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll have to find out more about David. You'll have to keep us apprised of the insurance, because everybody screams and yells about California and all the expenses we have. So where is it? Where is a good place to live? We are going to have to, you pay one place or the other. Those who do not have income tax in their state pay through property taxes and through their LLCs and corporation fees, as much as they'd like to not think they do. But I think Kentucky's got the highest, one of the highest LLCs in the US, not quite as high as California. But where is the balance in any of the states? Hey, we could go to Iowa. Is Tony still here? They lowered the income tax to 3% of whatever I don't even know if it's your gross or your net. But hey, we should get California to follow that. So does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add? If not, then thank you very much for coming. Next week we have Larissa Green from Advanta IRA, and she's going to talk about IRAs and what they can do and what you can do with them. So please come join us.
Thanks, Becky.
Thanks, Peg.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.